Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, ranking the debut albums of the Big Four of Thrash. The Big Four of Thrash, of course, being Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer, something that is sometimes argued about who should really be considered the Big Four of Thrash, but we're going with what is when people most commonly think of the Big Four, these are the bands that they think of. And thought it would be fun to rank their debut albums. Now, this wasn't easy to do. I like all these albums, and for some of the bands, I actually prefer their earlier stuff, their earlier sound, to where they went later, but I wanted to put myself to the task. So here it is, starting at number 4, my least favorite out of the 4. And again, I feel bad about this. For me, number 4 and number 3, I could have switched, and number 2 and number 1 could have switched too. But for number 4, I went with Megadeth, Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good. This came out in 1985. It's produced by Dave Mustaine and Carrot Faye. I was pronouncing that right. And that's kind of one of the issues that I have with this album is that the production on it is not really that great, and to the point of distraction a little bit. The album has kind of a noisy feel to it to me. The band hasn't quite gotten as tight as they would become, like on the next album to follow here, Peace Sells But Who's Buying. I will say that the original vinyl, this is the original vinyl, sounds way better to my ears than the remixed, remastered version that has that different cover and everything. That is really difficult for me to listen to. I just don't like the way that sounds, and I enjoy it much, much better on vinyl. It's way easier on the ears, but still, it's like the catchiness of Megadeth isn't quite there yet. I give them credit for really pushing the boundaries of thrash out of these 4 debut albums. I think this is the most forward thinking of all of them. I think the other 3 all have kind of half a foot in the new wave of British heavy metal, half a foot into the, what would be the whole thrash thing. So I do respect that you're pushing it, but it isn't quite together yet for me with the songwriting and everything. It's got the 2 Daves, of course, Dave Mustaine and Dave Ellefson, and Chris Poland and Gar Samuelson. Chris Poland on guitar, Gar Samuelson on drums. And, the playing is great on it and everything, but it just lacks a little bit for me in the songwriting and some of the tightness. But there is some great songs on here. The title track is awesome. The Skull Beneath the Skin I really like. Mechanics, which was something Mustaine wrote with Metallica that would show up as the Four Horsemen. It's part of the riffs on the Four Horsemen. But here it does sound really cool. I really, really dislike the cover of these boots. I just think that's... I never liked any of Megadeth's covers that they put out. I wish they didn't do that. They should have saved that for a B-side. So that lands at number 4 for me. Okay, number 3 is released January of '84, and it's Anthrax, Fistful of Metal. This one, out of all of them, out of these 4 debuts, this one, they had a different lineup for this. Neil Turbin on vocals, Dan Lilker on bass, of course, Joey Belladonna, and Frank Bello would come on the next album, Spreading the Disease. So here you hear a lot of like new wave of British heavy metal vibes to a lot of sped up new wave of British heavy metal, but there's definitely some things on here that are very thrashy. The production on it is okay. It's a little bit low budget, but it kind of works. I always thought the cover was kind of funny in a 80s, early 80s kind of way. Still some great songs on here though. Death Rider I really like. Metal Thrashing Mad is awesome. Soldiers of Metal I think is really cool. But again, this is kind of they haven't quite settled in yet 100% to their sound. So it lands at number 3 for me. Okay, number 2 is from December of 1983. I don't have this one on CD, on a vinyl. I only have it on CD. Show No Mercy. I did a great episode with Joel MacGyver that I'll link in the description down below, where we talked about the early Slayer albums. A fantastic episode. Joel MacGyver's written a book on Slayer, books on many metal topics, so check that out if you haven't seen that already. I really like this album because here you hear some of that new wave of British heavy metal thing, but I really hear Merciful Fate and Venom and them taking that and kind of speeding it up, if you will. But I like the dark, evil vibe to this record. I think that it's great. Tom Araya's voice is great on this. You can hear his bass on this album, which as the albums will go on, it was like you could hear less and less of his of his bass. But I kind of like that Merciful Fate vibe to a lot of these songs. There's a lot of changes to some of these songs, like Metal Storm Face the Slayer is fantastic, because I really love that one. Die by the Sword is great. Evil Has No Boundaries, Black Magic, Tormentor is just fantastic. And they would move more towards the classic Slayer sound, starting with the next Haunting the Chapel EP and then moving forward. But I kind of like this mix of Merciful Fate, Venom, new wave of British heavy metal, yet with this sort of thrash, dark thrash tone that Slayer has here. So I always had a soft spot for this in the Slayer catalog. Show No Mercy comes in at number 2. All right, so of course that leaves one left at number 1 for me is Kill 'Em All, released July of '83. What's there to say about this? This is a game-changing record. I remember hearing this on college radio and being floored. I tell this story all the time. The DJs on my local college radio station were saying Metallica. They weren't pronouncing it correctly, so I walked around for like a year saying Metallica, telling my friends you need to check out Metallica. But just top to bottom, you hear that new wave of British heavy metal influence, Diamond Head. It's a Motorhead in their sound, but they just amp it up. The songwriting is really great. That's for me what makes this stand out above. Makes it land at number 1 for me. Just the songwriting on here, the energy, Hit the Lights, The Four Horsemen, maybe my favorite song on this album, Jump in the Fire, Cliff Burton's Showcase and Anesthesia, Pulling Teeth is great, Whiplash, Phantom Lord, Seek and Destroy. I mean, the whole album is just great, and it was just a real game changer album here for 83, which is it the earliest out of all these? Yes, it's the earliest out of all these debuts here. So just a game-changing record. I just think the songwriting is great on it and just full of classic metal songs. A lot of these metal anthem songs that Metallica still plays in their set list. So Kill 'Em All lands at number 1 for me. Okay, there's my ranking of the debut albums from the Big Four of Thrash. Let me know what you think of my picks. What would your picks be? Put them in the comments down below. Make sure you check out my socials. Till we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.